Good morning, Raymond.
Good morning, Noah.
How are you?
Top of the morning to you.
Top of the morning.
Mighty fine. Fine like frog hair.
Top of the morning. Top of the morning. You're always so fun with your English linguistic skills.
Got to have some fun with it, right?
Absolutely.
You know, and we had a great time back in the Philippines one day when we were in a American English training session to help the technicians back in the day to improve their
American
pronunciation and so accent training. But you know, accent training has a way of rolling into other things, and the idioms that we say here in America.
Oh, I know.
They're so foreign, right? You know, unless they've seen it on TV or in a movie.
Yeah.
You know, what do you mean they let the cat out of the bag? And
Or top of the morning.
Top of the morning, fine as frog hair. It's like, well, wait a minute, what frog hair?
Frog hair, exactly.
It comes from the South.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of zeitgeist stuff that exists only here in the United States that doesn't exist around the world. As far as definitely the idioms, that's a good way to put it. Certain phraseology or phrasing.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I remember that day distinctly where, you know, the subject had been brought up and as we were talking about it, you know, the look on the faces, you know, looking back us were, you know, one is like, huh, what?
Yeah.
But then it truly turned into curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? And they're just, and then, you know, the accent training went to the side and idiom training and, you know, discussing on what are some of the ones you've heard and what does that mean? And it was good fun. We learned a lot that day. We bonded a bit.
No, listen, when you go to other cultures like that, and you and I got to do that quite a bit because, I mean, not quite a bit, but we got to do it enough. Even cultures in the United States change, right? From Denver to Louisiana to Florida to New York to Cali, right?
Absolutely.
In all those very specific places I've been, Texas is another good one, right? All those cultures are slightly different, and not even slightly sometimes. There's a big gap or a drastic change compared to northern Wisconsin to southern Texas. Right? So it's fun to see those cultures. And then, of course, you travel out of country and, you know, all of their zeitgeist information and their culture is totally different, right? They're talking about different things. And then, obviously, the idioms that you were saying, that they don't know what those are. And then, of course, they have their own, their own slang stuff that they like to use, too. So.
Yeah, the Filipinos point with their lips, like, okay, it's over that direction. I guess I'll head over that direction where they pointed their lips. Like,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's the thing, huh?
Yeah.
What do you ever just look back at that trip and just think about the adventures you had? Like, what did you? Just recap it for me. Like, what did you do that were the high points? I know you went not paragliding, but you went ultra light flying. I remember that. We were talking.
And that was
about
over by Mount Pinatubo too. That was quite the unique experience. Mostly it was 13 to 18 hour days in Manila.
Yeah.
But then when we got away, you know, obviously we had to switch from night shift to day shift, you know, and you know, and we'd have to change our sleeping cycle. But you know, getting to fly an ultralight around Mount Pinatubo, that was pretty unique.
Pretty highlight.
Yeah, not a whole lot of people I've spoken with have done that.
No. Was that solo or was it tandem? Did you have to go with somebody?
We did it with tandem. We were actually taking lessons to get certified, you know, with the licensing for that. But, you know, it was a lot of time away from the office and commuting out of Manila, all that stuff, time away. You know, and there's no substitute for flying, right? You have to fly. You have to put in your hours. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just no substitute.
Otherwise, you don't know how to handle the scenarios as they come at you, and that's obviously why you need that much time. Well, a buddy of mine was down here at the training facility for Frontier. He does the simulator every 6 months or something like that. They have to requal or you know,
on the simulator,
whatever they have to do through their challenges on the simulator. And of course, he got food poisoning, so he was dehydrated, no food, having to run in the sim, and didn't really want to have food just in case there was an issue. You know, so sometimes the pilot's life seems appealing, and then sometimes it's like, oof, that's a lot of stress. Because if you don't qual, you don't get to work, right? Or if you don't qual, maybe that's a strike against you, and then you have to come back in 3 months and requal or requalify, and you know, go through those same scenarios or different scenarios. Who knows? I mean, pilots will know.
Yeah, it's a whole nother. it's a whole nother world that's foreign to us.
Chat
right?
GPT knows, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. We know telecom, we know dialers, but
Yeah.
we only see the surface of the pilot's life, just as they sort of see the surface of our life and the spam flags and the client activities that come to them.
I know.
Thanks to us and our technology and our solutions.
Well, and the FCC just came out with a new announcement by June 25th. Everybody has to be self-signing their calls on a digital certificate. So, which we're already doing. But
very good. Well, yeah, of course, we've been doing this for many years. It's the classic thing where the legitimate players are doing the right thing. It's the illegitimate players that have forced us into these regulations and that have forced the negative feedback to go all the way up to Congress to push it back down to the industry when we were self-regulating ourselves. And I've seen it. You have too, in the other industries such as collections and.
When it's really an attack on, in my opinion, it's really an attack on the First Amendment. Right? You have the ability to communicate or have free speech. But do you have the ability to have free speech and harass people on the phone? That's the question. Can you harass people over and over and over again and continue to get away with it? And that's what we're trying to avoid, right? That's what the industry is trying to remove from our ecosystem, is get rid of the spam calls that hit and the bad players that are producing those spam calls, right? So we got some news.
My wife is in. I'm sorry. I was just going to say really quick. I think it's really interesting that the FCC is mandating that all calls be self-signed. I was just going to say my wife is in real estate, and it's fascinating how many phone calls she gets where there is no caller ID, and that should not be happening.
Right.
Right. What network is passing through calls in North America without passing any caller ID?
Yeah, it's odd.
I'm surprised that's even happening.
Me too.
It's easy for her to dismiss them too, right? The pickup rate on those calls has to be 0.001, and yet they still persist.
Yeah, and then if they hit a landline and somebody doesn't have caller ID on their landline, but I mean, how many people have landlines now? These are some actually really good questions that we've been talking about before. How many landline phones are left in the United States? Let's see if that comes up. What's your guess?
5 million or less?
Oh, I bet you it's 50. I bet you it's 50 million or so.
People that have just not released their...
Here it is, 83 million landline subscriptions in 2023.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's still quite a few 88 million landline subscriptions, and we have 330 million people in the country. So is that telling you a trend? Landlines are obviously not getting installed very much anymore. And who knows, 88 million of those landline subscriptions half of them could be call centers. T1s, T3s, E1s, E3, whatever they are. Right?
Yeah, and a lot of residences with just legacy phones that grandma and grandpa have not disconnected.
Yeah, so they don't have caller ID.
Unless they have the little
box, or they connected it through Comcast. And I don't know if Comcast is considered, or Xfinity, or Charter, or any of those cable companies that provide phone service, right? I don't know if any of those are considered landline.
Yeah, and so much of it is voice over IP these days. As we were talking earlier, I was thinking about these landlines that people have to their homes. As soon as it hits the telco network, it's being converted to voice over IP, SIP traffic that it used to be copper wire, off hook, on hook.
Yeah. And then, of course, AI says that, no, Comcast, Xfinity, Voice Premier, and Charter phone services are not considered traditional landlines. They use voice over IP.
So they're not calculated in that 80 million.
Yeah, so how many of those subscribers are there? Phone subscribers. Let's ask. Subscribers are there. Let's see. Okay, so not that many. They grew from 1 million in the fourth quarter of 2019 to 9.88 million in the quarter of 2024. So, they added a lot of phone subscription. That's interesting, as far as a cable provider goes.
Yeah, it's interesting how the cable providers have come into the space.
Yeah.
They've, to some degree displaced some of the big players.
So as of 2024, fourth quarter looks like there was, 9.8 and 7.3, so 10 and 8. So about 18 million voice over IP subscribers through Comcast and Xfinity or Charter, whoever there. I know there's a few other players out there too. That's some good information.
Yeah, and it's interesting how the market is changing, who the providers are, changing into cable providers. So
Yeah.
I see you just switched the slide.
Yeah, I mean, we have some really cool stuff that is coming down the pipe. I'm going to start off with the thing that's most fresh to me, and it's the chatbot, audio bot, JSON payload. Oh, it's going to be real nerdy, but that's okay. And we just sort of had that breakthrough moment that we've been waiting for about the last 5 weeks, right? So getting bidirectional audio to and from the bot with real voice engagement. So,
and you're speaking about, let's back up a minute. We're talking about integrating with a AI provider, an AI bot provider. Right. And we were receiving a bit stream. We were not receiving an audio stream.
Correct.
So it's zeros and ones.
You're receiving ASCII character strings that you have to convert from strings back into audio and then play for a human being. Now, the bot doesn't have to do that, right? The bot can just take the strings and do pattern matching within the strings. It doesn't have to change it to audio and go text to speech. It can go right from the ASCII character structure, decode it into a pattern that they can detect audio in that string pattern, and then just pull the words out of the strings. So that there's no like speech to text, right? There's no conversion there. That's why it's so fast. That's why it can be that fast, right? Because you can match out those, you can pattern match voice inside of these strings. And then you can hit your LLM, get your question answered, return back your speech to text or text to speech, which isn't text to speech either. It's payload that comes back to us that we decode and we play. So
what's really interesting, I was wondering about that. Like, how do you get like accents and like the tonal quality and the rich voice that we expect as humans when you're receiving that bit stream? How is that sounding? I know that you guys just had this breakthrough for the code. And
the patterning is, I think it's based off of either a real human or it was, some 3 or 4 paragraphs some human read with all the possible word combinations that they wanted, the 5,000 words available to deliver back to a human being, and then they pick out those words. Maybe they fix intonation here or certain fluctuations in the tone, right? It doesn't sound choppy, so they figured out how to smooth that out in some way. But then they have a library of those words or sentences or phrases that they can just send over payload. Pew, pew, pew. And then we pick up that payload and decode it back into human voice. It's kind of wild. Even from, we've been doing this a long time. It's wild. And we even do, you and I both know that if you install a T1, it's not actually a phone line. It's a channelized data stream with wrappers and headers. And then
the data channel, voice channels.
Channel, voice channel. And then as packets go from one end to the other at 1024 a chunk or whatever it is, 1,024 bytes at a time, and it's sending it across the pipe, it's still wrapping up and breaking up our audio into ones and zeros, and then it's decoding it on the other side. It's wild. I mean, it's not like a record player, right? We're not hearing vibrations and audio from the vibrations. We're hearing encoded voice in packetized environments back and forth. And it's actually, from a nerd perspective, it really changes, your thoughts on how voice works. Because voice is anything else. It can be even video. You're taking a picture, right? It's all pixelated with tiny little color structures, right? And it's 16 million colors or 32 million colors or whatever it might be. But it's not like, our meat computer is just taking in analog and it's converting it real time, which is incredible on its own.
In its own right, yeah. And we grew up, right? We grew up with, computers and voice, and it's always been the voice. But now, in our lifetime, it's converting to bit streams, and we're having to encode them and decode them. And the AI engine, that AI bot, can quickly assess what the consumer is saying, and quickly assess what the proper response is, and provide it back to the consumer. And it's all lightning fast. It's almost like the voice becomes the bottleneck, because the AI can process
So it's interesting. I had a chat with some guys, a group from AWS they specialize in certain projects, right? In certain wings of AWS, certain departments of AWS, right? There's value added resellers there that can bring product structure or bring customers to certain product sets, right? And then I was talking to them about their LLM, because AWS has LLM as well. And I was asking him about their response time. And he goes, well, in some cases, they had to actually slow the response time down because it was too quickly responding to the human being. It didn't sound natural.
Wow.
So that was wild.
That's really wild.
I would never think that would be the case, because, you typically have latency from one end to the other. Now, in truth, we never bench tested that. And I'm assuming that the latency between our data center and AWS and the transactions that have to process on the back end, we're talking about 50 to 100 to 200 milliseconds, right, of response. Then we have the wire in between to get to us. Then we have to decode and respond. So there's going to be some latency introduced into that sort of scenario, or that handshake process and that back and forth audio. But I mean, it's going to sound pretty dang close, And if we have it, of course, in our data center, it's going to be primo.
Right. You don't have the wire. You don't have to have the distance between.
It cuts out 50 milliseconds on every single packet that comes and goes. So drop it from 50 to 2 or 50 to micro milliseconds, then we're in really good shape.
Right. In all the text-to-speech tests, we've tested with multiple providers at this point, and evaluating
Poly and
who's best and whatnot. But there's always been delay, and here we are once again in our lifetime. We're seeing where they actually have to delay the response, because now it's been removed. The technology is continuing to improve, which is super impressive.
Yeah, it is very impressive. We're literally on the cutting edge of the forest here. We're right out front. We're a little bit behind, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. The Fortune 500 have millions of dollars in their pockets, and here we are doing it for tens of thousands or less.
A couple bucks.
Making it happen.
Certainly. But it's good. We hit those milestones. We're excited to bring that to the market here, I would assume, by the end of summer. And obviously deliverables to the people that we're working with very closely much sooner than that, of course. But
right. And we're talking about AI bots to help with the frontline calls, qualify the consumer,
take customer service questions, whatever it might be.
Start managing 60, 70, 80% of the inbound questions, and
be a 24-hour call center.
Right.
Anybody can call you anytime for anything. And of course, the bot might not be able to service 100% of those calls, but if it can cut out 80 to 90%, that's really the savings you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
That's
and
human
with
time.
Accuracy. It's informed on what your open hours are. It's informed on the mailing instructions and common questions, and it never gets tired. It never has a bad day. It's always on a happy note because it's doing its job.
And in truth, like, even human beings sometimes can't solve all the problems on the phone either. Sometimes you have to get a supervisor or, find a different resource, escalate it to tier 3 support, whatever it is, right? So even in the human realm, there's not 100% solve rates for questions or sales related issues or whatever it might be, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so that's, these frontline bots will answer 60, 80% of the questions, and where they can't, we barge them over to an agent, get them to a live human who should be able to answer those questions.
Yeah, or schedule a call back.
Yeah, if it's after hours, absolutely. Drop it into the voicemail, give them a nice...
Play this scenario out with me. So pretend we have an AI bot that's engaging, and that's tier 1 AI bot. And then you have tier 2 AI bot. The AI bot can't solve, and it transfers to the more advanced AI bot, right? It's like ChatGPT 3 versus 4.0 plus.
Right. Well, you have a generalized model for the general questions.
Yeah.
But then if it's very specific,
send it up to the tier 2 bot.
Right. That tier 2 bot has been specifically trained for that, type of question and answer routine.
Do you think that's coming?
Absolutely.
It probably already is here. Likely.
Didn't we just heard somebody saying that, that's like there's the frontline bot and here's the pre-trained bot for the more complicated questions, right? Because eventually we're going to be replacing a lot of agents on the call center floors.
I know.
And, to be able to accomplish that, the AI bots are going to have to be able to answer some specific questions and some more complicated
With
questions.
high accuracy. Yeah. All right. So we have a couple other things we want to talk about too. So walk me into spam flagging.
Okay. Well, over here at My Call Cloud, we do not rest. We continually are working to improve. And, we are a telco in our own right.
Yeah.
And so we're self-signing. We have been self-signing our calls for some time now. And so all of our clients are getting the A attestation on the shake and stir outbound sending of calls.
Mm-hmm.
And we've built new technology for smart number management. We can rotate calls, or we can rotate the caller ID based on the client specifications, right? I want to have a local caller ID. I want to have a toll-free caller ID. This is a high value campaign. I want to show XYZ. Well, we can deliver that based on their stated needs.
Yep. Protective spam testing, proactive spam testing as well.
Right.
So that's kind of new to, it's new to us a little bit, and then it's a little bit newer in the industry too. I mean, there were people that were doing not proactive spam testing. They were just getting spam flags and then recording it. And we all know DNC.com, they offer a product for that as well.
Yeah, their trust call product.
Trust call product, but it's, it's after the fact.
Right. Yeah. A lot of the providers in the space they're polling to find out what's the status of this number.
Exactly.
It's reactive. It's not proactive, right? We are proactively going out and testing, right? We're watching, because we're a telco, we're watching the calls feedback coming back to us, and we identify where, when the telcos are clearly identifying that it's spam flagged.
Or high volume used DIDs, right? High volume used caller ID numbers. Then we can test them.
And then we can test them ourselves too. Right. So we get, sort of a double blind, right? We get the information ourselves, but then we also proactively verify.
Absolutely. And I've already talked to customers about this, and they're like, what else is there? What else are you guys working on? Because they know we're working on stuff all the time.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's fun to get that conversation going.
We are. Yeah. And there's other things we're doing, right? We have, go down to the next slide. We have some bullet points on things that we've been doing. So we have the proactive spam testing, like we were just speaking of, and the attestation of A on the calls going out on our network.
Yeah.
That's...
Talk about attestation a little bit. I don't know if a lot of people know what that means.
Right. Yeah. I'm assuming that people in the industry are watching, but the attestation, the legislation specified,
was it policy or legislation? I think it was policy.
It was policy that was driven by legislation, right?
That's right.
Wasn't it it was mandated that the FCC, we got to take control of this problem.
Figure this out.
Right. The problem is that there's unwanted players abusing the American public with unwanted phone calls.
Yeah.
And there's, like we've seen in so many other industries, truth in advertising.
Yeah.
Right. We're seeing it with the SMS numbers. You have to register. You have to prove you're a valid company to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And with caller ID, that should be, for the American consumer, a point of truth, right? If this number is calling me, if it's a legitimate customer or if it's a legitimate business, I should be able to know who they are. I should be able to call them back and reach out to them. But there's a lot of nefarious players out there that are spoofing other people's phone numbers or providing.
Well, and let's break it down even a little bit further. Let's go a little higher level. It just means that we're attesting for that customer. We are sending some of our credibility on each one of those calls, right? So if, for example, if it's not a self-signed call, stir shake, and we're talking about stir shaking more specifically, if it's not signed somewhere by a carrier, either your carrier that you're using or yourself, your own digital certificate, then the attestation is not going to be as high, right? The highest attestation is A. There's A, B, and then C, and then none, right?
Wasn't there D?
There might be D.
Yeah,
too.
there's a D, but who wants a D? And nobody's going to, those D attestations are going to come up on the far end as spam likely, right? they're not trusted. So as a call progresses through the telco network here in North America,
Yeah.
the telcos are each attesting to the validity, for the truthfulness, for the trustworthiness of these calls. So
Right.
they leave our network as at a station A, and we do a direct handoff to one of the large players, and
Yep.
it should arrive at the far end also at a station A. But if it's going through multiple carriers and they don't know us, or
Right.
they have rules in their telecom network that,
Well, in theory, and hopefully most of the telecom endpoints are doing this at this point, is they're spot checking certificate signing, right? There's just spot check, because that's got to go through the whole call string process, right? That certificate signing string exists in the SIP header all the way through from start to finish. Well,
if
not
you
from
don't
start
have
to
it,
finish.
well,
but-
it's not even going to complete, right?
Yeah.
If you hand it off and you don't have that right framework for the SIP header and the attestation,
Yeah.
the call is going to die.
or it's
not
gonna,
going to
or it's gonna
complete.
be, it's either gonna die, or it's gonna come through spam likely, or no attestation at all. And the deliverable of that, and this is where the First Amendment for me comes in, is if I can't deliver a piece of communication to somebody and it's legitimate, is that infringing on your First Amendment right? Possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah. Move that.
Well, and also we have to, the classic example, it's your healthcare provider, it's your
Right.
your children's school, the nurse up at school needs to talk to a parent.
Right.
And if those calls are not being attestationed properly as a valid, legitimate caller,
And then it doesn't get delivered. Now you've got maybe a life impacting risk that you didn't get information for it.
potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know. So that's always my beef there, is that we don't keep people from getting the information that they're supposed to get, and allowing people to have the freedom to talk to each other. That's the concern I have, right? Is that these regulations will start to clamp down too much on legitimate communication. And we know that's happening already. It's just small scale here and there. The oil shop can't call you because they've made 100 oil changes that day, and now their number looks like spam. Grease monkey calls. Hey, your car's done. Well, it came through as spam likely. Why would I answer it?
Right. Well, or there, a lot of it comes down to, and that's one of the benefits of coming to us, is
Yeah.
people get free consulting. But if you have a marketing campaign to get the word out, hey, we have an oil change special.
Yeah.
Well, using that number for marketing can get spam flagged. You don't want to use that same number to do the appointment reminders. You want to have a separate number for your car is now ready.
Yeah.
Right. And you want to have the flexibility of also maybe having an SMS number that's been attested to, that it's legitimate. And that
So
you
for
can-
a handful of dollars a month, people can really mitigate that by having multiple phone numbers for a particular purpose.
That's right. It just costs a little bit of money to have an extra phone number that's reserved for appointment reminders, and
Exactly.
a separate number that is for spam, for SMS to get the word out. That's one of the beauties in our system, right?
Yeah.
You try to reach someone, they don't answer. Well, we can follow up with an SMS message right away.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right. So it's attestation. I hope we beat that to death. I think people understand what attestation might be a little bit at this point. What else are we looking at here?
Just the intelligent number display. There's logic that we have built to display local area code. If there's no area code in your inventory of phone numbers, we can do an overlay. Some people want to do state-based caller ID,
Right.
and it's driven by our clients. Each of our clients has their own unique secret sauce and their own
Their specific
ways that
needs.
they want to
Yeah.
dial, right? And so what is it they want to display on the outbound caller ID?
Right.
And so we've built some tools to help automate that. It used to be a very static thing, and they
Cumbersome
didn't,
process.
and the consumers didn't have a lot of control over that. And really what we've done is taken some intelligence to this whole problem.
Yeah.
And we've taken in the consumer feedback of what our clients want, and we've built that into our system as an option now. So
Okay.
very cool stuff. And number resting, we have logic to, if we identify a number has been spam flagged on the North American network, we can give that number a rest, let it not be used, remove it from the current inventory usage, and then
keep it in the pool, but just in the background in the archive, right? Just make sure that number, whatever the resting requirement is or the time frame is, you don't get rid of the number. You just rest it, and then you can bring it back.
Right. It's still my number. I can control that number. I do control that number. It's associated with my business name. And I want to actually, I want to improve the reputation of that phone number. And if it's been used heavily, well, that degrades its reputation. If I rest it, then those negative spam flags that were put out on it were slowly
they time off,
right?
Or they time out or fall away. Yeah.
And then I can reuse my number. It used to be years ago, we used to, dump all these numbers, go get new numbers. Mm-hmm. And it used to be a time that we were able to get clean numbers that were rested at the telco.
Yeah.
Right? 30, 90 days, 60, 90 days. Now it's, you're buying new numbers, and it's just because they've become available from somebody else. So you're inheriting somebody else's garbage. Their numbers were spam flagged. There's a reason they dropped those numbers.
Yeah. It's interesting. Sometimes you'll get a call and you'll be like, I wonder who called me. And then you type in the phone number online. You see what it is. And there's 5 or 6 businesses that show up with that phone number, So clearly one business has got rid of it. Somebody else has bought it, used it for a while, got rid of it. And now it's just showing up on the record as being owned by who knows how many people per year. Right.
And that's in part our next generation of spam assessment tools is going to look in part also at that, right? What's then the turnover rate of this phone number?
Right.
If it's been owned for a long time, well, then that's probably a legitimate business. If it's been,
I wonder if that's a parameter people are looking at in the telco space.
When I was looking at the results, I did not see that, but absolutely we're going to do that because that information is publicly available if you know where to look.
Right. Very good.
Cool.
So that's the resting. Here's the rotation.
Right. We were talking a little bit about that, right? You intelligently manage the usage of your phone numbers, and we don't want to heavily saturate any one phone number. And then we also have number pooling. We were just talking about that, right?
Yeah.
The people that release numbers. Well, people in our network that release numbers, we're trying to pool those numbers, and then we can provide back to other clients of ours within our network rested phone numbers that have been,
that we can trust.
That we can trust, right? They are, and we can add a station A. Number provisioning, right? So if you need new numbers, you can just send off a quick email. You don't even have to drive the email. You can just click a couple of buttons and we'll automate that email up to support, let them know what numbers you're looking for, what area codes you're looking to purchase.
And that's just out of beta testing. We just got out of testing with that, and that went well.
That's right. It's interesting
the funny thing is, and this is going to blow I know it blows your mind too, is that people are interacting with email more than they're interacting with a live report on the system. The live report is whatever it is, it's too complicated. But the email is some sort of legitimate document that they're absorbing, identifying the information on that email, which is the same as the dashboard.
Right. But there's a call to action.
There's a call to action. Yeah.
And it's a simple 1, 2, yes, this is what I want.
Doesn't that surprise you a little bit that email ended up being the sort of the GUI interface that that people interact with the most?
It does. I think it gets back to people want the easy button. It's one thing to have a nice, sexy display of what is reporting, but sometimes that takes, it requires proactive analysis by the human, and we're so busy. There's so many competing competition on our time, that if it's there in an email and it's pretty clear that yes, I'm dialing heavily here, I need more numbers there, yes, just send off that email. And that's that easy button that people are often looking for. And the reports are, it's reversed it. Right now the reports are validating your actions versus driving your actions, which is, it's interesting as we go.
I never thought, because we've been working on this for about 6 months, 8 months, and I never thought email was going to be the way people make decisions. But that's the way they're making decisions.
Right.
They're not looking at the real-time dashboard. Just send me an email.
That's right.
Next it'll be text.
Make it easy.
Next it'll be text. We'll send a yes/no question. Hey, you got some extra numbers, or your usage is too high for this. Would you like to replace it? Reply with yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I'm just
people
calling
are,
it out. That's probably going to happen.
well, it is a good next step for us too, because, people get inundated with emails, and if it's critical, mission critical to their call center,
Yeah.
I want you to send that to me as an SMS if there's been.
I mean, somebody
response.
sent me an important email on Yahoo, my Yahoo email that I've had for 28 years or whatever it is. And I was like, dude, you can't send. Like, if you need something, you better text me or call me, because Yahoo email is going to build up to 1,000 or 2,000 emails unread before I even get to it, So don't send it to Yahoo.
Or send me an SMS to notify me that there's an email that needs your attention.
I know.
Yep, and we're building a phone number forecasting, right? Based on, we see that within our client base, they will be dialing certain regions, and regions are hot and then they go cold, or new lines of business open up, and so now they're dialing Indiana where they didn't. And so we see those trending numbers where there's more calls here, less calls there. So then we can once again do that proactive alerting, let them know, hey, looks like you're running low on inventory for the future. If you're continuing to dial in Indiana, you may want to consider purchasing more numbers. Inventory. Yeah, and so that proactive, once again, let our consumers know.
Yep.
Let our clients know. Caller ID management, right? Well, that's always been there. We are a telco in our own right. We have our own OCN, and we push out the caller ID name assignment, often known as CNAM within the industry. Sometimes it takes a couple of times to push it out. The receiving parties on the far side in America do not always
get that update.
Yeah.
Well, because there's 6 or 7 databases that people use for CNAM, and so if you're updating one, propagation to the other databases is not immediate. This isn't like DNS and you're changing your DNS address for your website, right?
Right. And a few minutes later, it's up and going.
Yeah, it propagates to all the DNS servers, primary DNS servers in the world within 5, 10, 15 minutes. They say 24 hours, on GoDaddy, but I've never actually seen it go that long.
I think 15 minutes is about the longest I've ever had to wait.
Especially here in the United States. Now, maybe worldwide, that's a different scenario. Maybe DNS servers in, Spain or Germany or Italy or whatever don't get the updates as fast as we get them here. But I'd have to assume they're probably getting them pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Well, and that technology has been established for a while.
It's been around.
And DNS is sort of one of those things that really drives the internet. So.
And the protocol really hasn't changed that much. I mean, the only thing that I'm mad about DNS is that, especially if you need to use SSL, you have to have some sort of endpoint with SSL on a name convention. It can't just be IP address, right? Because DNS is used in that process to then validate a certificate.
And you can't go straight to...
Can't go to the IP
you gotta
and have SSL, which I always found that to be a downfall. I mean, I know there's workarounds on that, but still not exciting. So CNAM is interesting because it's still sort of kludgy, but we get it through.
Yep, when we push it through, and we have direct access to the telcos to push that out. So... And then twice monthly phone number registration. We register phone numbers for clients and basically tell all the major telcos that these are legitimate customers, these are legitimate calls,
right? And
you need to let these calls go through your network. Don't impede these calls from traversing through your network.
Yep.
So, and we see a rise in connectivity after that has been sent out.
Isn't that funny that we have to go through all these steps now? We have to register phone numbers. We have to provide a signed digital certificate for Stir Shaken. We have to do tracebacks if somebody wants a traceback. It seems bizarre that all of the onus has been put on the providers.
Right.
All of it.
And we're just a service provider. We're supposed to be delivering.
Right. I just think about it sometimes and we got, obviously we're happy to help solve problems, right? And one of the problems is the spam calling in the United States. So we're happy to help solve that problem. But also, they didn't tell us you're going to have to do 12 other things, right? So all these bullet points are things that we now do,
right?
That we didn't necessarily have to do before.
We have to support the truth in advertising, and as legislation changes, we have to meet those changing needs. And, if we're not going to do it, who is, right?
Yeah.
So we have to make it happen.
And then we do a couple other, obviously we do a lot of other things here, but
Absolutely. Yep. And then we let people bring in other, we are a full service white glove call center solution provider. You can bring in your CRM, whether it be custom or something that everyone knows by name.
Yeah.
You can bring in your AI provider. We've been doing that with several clients. Currently, we have several in process. If you have your big data solution and you want to use a call center solution to help reach those prospects, by all means. We have APIs that are well documented, fully vetted, super strong. We're here to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
Custom SMS, no dial, the voicemail, call center solutions, right? What is it that you need? What's the secret sauce?
Yeah.
And we're here to deliver it in a
Yeah,
timely
in
fashion.
truth, we don't just deliver a service, right? We're a fully staffed integrator that can connect to all your stuff. And that's the way it has to be now. Nobody just says, hey, I just need phone calls, right?
Yeah, that's how it used to be years ago. And
Yeah.
well, we need this integration with our Lawson database or whatever that CRM was for collections. But now it's before we even get on to a demo, we start talking about what are the integration needs.
What CRM do you use? What blah, blah, blah do you have? What time card system do you use for your staff, whatever it is.
And that's like the precursor to even going into,
I need to make a phone
sales
call.
engineering.
Yeah.
Before we even make a phone call and talk about cascading over into SMS or ringless voicemail, no dial. Yeah.
One of the other projects that's coming up for us that I find to be a little bit gripping and exciting is the multi-resource calendar management tool, right? And this is not going to just be for that one customer that you and we know who we're talking about. This is going to happen more and more where people are doing appointment setting for specific, agencies or entities or customers or sales arms or groups or whatever it might
disparate be. The wide you got to get the appointment set.
We know that building a tool like that is as complicated as integrating an AI voice bot, if not harder, right? Because then how do you provide the front end for UI management for the resources and the geographic, the time zone, the radius location of a particular resource that can go out and do an appointment, right? So there's so many factors and parameters that are involved with efficiently managing an appointment setting process and booking other people's time, right?
Yep. Making it easy for the agents to be, while they're on the phone, to identify what's available at what time for the right sub party, for the right,
absolutely.
So
and then we have a little special going on till the end of the year. It's 20% off. You sign up in Q2 2025 and get the discount until 2026. So you get 6 months where you get some time to get a little bit of a discount on your product or service that you're trying to go for, and then get your feet wet. Of course, make some money.
That's right.
Right.
And then it's an easy decision because we've proven ourselves, as we often do.
Yep. All right, so that was a good session on all the new things related to spam protection. Let's pull up just our little slick here. We'll give that a little attention as well. That's kind of a fun one.
Yep. Proactive spam testing and the guaranteed attestation A and smart number management and intelligent options for resting, rotating, pooling numbers, assigning numbers, recalling. Oh, we didn't even touch on that. That's a very popular one that is about to come out here in the next week or two, where you can recall. It's a perfect example, right? Mm-hmm. We set the appointment and we need to have that appointment reminder.
Right.
We recall with the last known good contact number. Although I may have an inventory of thousands of phone numbers,
caller ID numbers.
When I'm calling back, right? When I'm calling back to John Smith to confirm that appointment, I'm using that same last number that he had picked up on, so that so that
the likelihood of John Smith picking up on that phone number again is highly likely.
That's right.
Right, because he's seen it. It's in his call history. It might even have branded caller ID on it or a CNAM. So
Yeah, some good stuff.
Fun stuff with spam and DID management and spam protection. So we've done some really cool things here in the last 6 months for sure.
And more is on the way.
What else do you got for this particular topic?
Well, I think we've talked a lot about that. Yeah, I think we're pretty good. I think next we talk more about AI and the integrations we've been doing.
Sounds good.
And we also have, we've been doing some SMS work, right? We've created some new tools there and integrations.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
You'll see us on another video talking about SMS.
Very good.
Bye, everybody.